But what is really the major problem in this country today is the fascism in our streets. The attacks on American citizens by masked hoodlums. If you were attacked by a masked person, you might think you were being kidnapped. You'd be justified in shooting the person to protect yourself.
Still in the US and borders, Tom Homan has confirmed he's withdrawing 700 immigration and customs enforcement officers from Minneapolis, or ICE agents. This as lawmakers on Capitol Hill race to impose further limits on immigration agents right across the United States.
Effective immediately, we will draw down 700 people.
After arriving in Minneapolis just last week, President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, is now so satisfied with the cooperation he's getting from local authorities that he's sending some federal agents home. He says the biggest change is local counties are now turning over jailed illegal immigrants to ICE instead of releasing them.
Arresting a public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail is the safest thing we could do.
Back in Washington, lawmakers have less than 10 days to reach a compromise on ICE reform, or the Department of Homeland Security will run out of funding.
We are not going to fund a rogue department with its unchecked agents and officers.
They want to abolish this agency, and I'm not going to participate in that.
DHS already agreed to issue body cameras to every agent in the field.
The president is supportive of this decision because we have nothing to hide.
But Democrats also want agents to stop wearing masks.
We know that these law enforcement officers are being targeted by crazy people. Why would we want to jeopardize their lives?
Sheriffs, local police, traffic cops, you don't see them with masks, do you?
A critical note here is that ICE is already largely funded through Trump's big, beautiful bill. So if DHS shuts down next week, ICE will continue to operate, but TSA, the Coast Guard, and FEMA will lack funding.
Let's talk about what's happening in the United States. Donald Trump is facing massive issues at home, and of course he's also weighing up whether or not to strike Iran or not. I want to get your thoughts on both issues. Let's start with what's happening domestically. Trump announced over the weekend that the government will not be assisting blue cities with ongoing anti-ICE riots unless help is requested, adding that he's instructed ICE agents to be very forceful in the protection of federal property. Adam, you covered the BLM riots and you've covered US politics for some time now. Looking at what's happening in America right now, there are plenty of reports that the protests that we've been seeing in recent weeks are not exactly organic. What's your read on where this is at the moment and what we're likely to see unfold?
Well, I think the first point to make is the US is completely riddled with people who should not be there legally. That's true. 5 million, 10 million, no one really knows the number because it's hard to track. And Donald Trump was elected on a platform to remove a very large swathe of those people, a small proportion of whom are actually criminals. They do cause damage. We know that. And they have very vigorously tried to enforce that policy. And it's hard. People hide. It's hard to know who's who. And you've seen in Minnesota the riots, the 2 accidental shootings, and that was a very bad look, I think. I mean, you can argue about whose fault it was, but at the end of the day, 2 people were shot by federal agents. It's not a good look for the federal government. And I think after the second one happened, I think a lot of supporters, even me, were a bit like, oh God, maybe we have to slow down a bit here. Because it just creates so much anger. And, you know, one famous fund manager said, I think it was Ray Dalio, said the US was on the brink of civil war. I mean, I think that's excessive, but that's the sort of thing some very intelligent people are thinking. So he has pulled back. I think he's announced there'll be no more ICE agents going to Minnesota, or they'd only go if the local state asks them to go. So I think that's an admission that the aggression levels or the implementation was not right. But the principle is right, I think. I mean, you know, if you have a law, well, it should be enforced. If it's not enforced, we'll just change the law and get rid of it. And that's where I think that is going to head. So Trump has stepped back on that one.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Look, we do need to see a de-escalation, and so we can't have any more people being shot because it's absolutely tragic. But he's got a lot on his plate, Donald Trump. He's, of course, weighing up striking Iran. There are reports today that the US and Iran may be holding diplomatic talks in Istanbul on Friday, but of course there are warships in the Middle East. How do you think this is going to play out? What's your sense?
Yeah, well, look, this is very risky. I think it's riskier than last year when the US dropped those bombs on that country to stop some of its uranium enrichment. There's, as you say, there's a warship armada there. I think the Arab allies of the US are trying very frantically and very hard to pull the US back from being more aggressive, because they see that Iran has essentially on this been cornered. It's had all those protests, which have been extremely embarrassing, domestic protests where thousands have been killed. So it's a humiliated regime, but when regimes get like that, they are likely to strike back if they're attacked because they're worried that they'll collapse. And I think the threats that the US has made to Iran, they can't really be accepted by Iran. I mean, if I was Iran, if you were Iran, you would not accept them. They're basically saying you can't have a foreign policy, you can't have missiles of a certain length, and of course, you can't have nuclear weapons. You know, maybe on that third one, they will make progress, but I think the others too, in my view, they're probably going to be dropped because no self-respecting sovereign nation is going to allow some other country to tell it who it can and can't give money to, especially, you know, a country of 80 million people that's thousands of years old. I mean, that's how they see it, right? So, but on the other hand, Trump has foolishly, in my view, said that he would save the protesters or at least help them. But I can't see how he can do that without basically invading the country. And Trump has done a lot of interventions, but I think he likes the low-cost ones where you just drop a few bombs or you kidnap someone, you know, and then everything goes back to normal. But a full-scale war with Iran would not be like that.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch him hold off for now. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Senior Research Fellow and Chief Economist at the Institute of Public Affairs, Adam Crichton, thank you so much for joining us, talking about all issues around the world. We really appreciate it.
Indeed.